Welcome to Far Out with Faust. I'm Faust Chicho, and today I'm sitting here with a good friend of mine, Reuben Langdon. Reuben's an actor, he's a filmmaker, he's a stuntman, he's an artist. He began his career in Japan, acting in a television series there, and eventually made his way over to Hollywood, where he continued his acting and performed as a stuntman in some of the most iconic films of our time, including James Cameron's Avatar. He is also the charismatic voice of Ken Masters in the Street Fighter video game franchise. So if you recognize his voice, you know why. Today, Reuben continues to pursue his acting career while at the same time following his passion for creating inspirational and motivational content. Reuben, thanks for beaming in, brother. Great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me, Faust. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. So I wanted to get everyone up to kind of quasi up to speed with where you're at, because I just think it's so awesome that you worked on Avatar, and I mean, tell us a little bit about what you were doing on the set of Avatar and how that was and how that changed your life.
Yeah. So back, let's see, what was that? 2005, 4 or 5-ish. I had already been working and living in LA, in the film industry there for, let's say about 5-6 years. I had worked on shows like, got my start on Power Rangers and, martial law, and I had done a lot up until that time. I'd done a lot of video game work, which was still a bit of a rarity back then, doing the motion capture stuff where you put the dots on.
Yeah.
And having had that experience, I had a production company. We were doing casting and coordinating and localization for a lot of Japanese video games. So when the phone rang, or I should say, not when the phone rang, when Avatar came along, I was already in that loop of motion capture artist slash knowing any type of motion capture projects. I had heard the rumors. Initially, Cameron was going to do Battle Angel first. That was on his plate. He had been developing it for years. And I had actually gotten called from one of the motion capture houses to come out and do a test. It was more of a computer test for the computer guys for the hardware, but they needed a performer just to be in the suit and do some cool moves. And I had been a huge fan of Battle Angel growing up. I lived in Japan, grew up in manga and anime kind of pulled me to Japan. So I'd already been aware of that franchise. I'd been aware that James Cameron had the rights. When I got the call, I was like, yes, Battle Angel. Did the test. Cameron was not there on the day that I was doing the test. It was all of his tech people, and John Lando, the producer, was there. And then it went away. I didn't hear anything. I'm like, what's going on? And then all of a sudden I heard a friend was working on it. And I said, so you're working on Battle Angel? And he goes, well, no, it's not Battle Angel.
I don't think it's Battle Angel. It starts with an A,
and I
though.
described it. He's like, yeah, that's not Battle Angel. And I'm like, well, what are you doing? That's what's going on.
Yeah.
But he knew of my work in the motion capture world, in the video games. So he kept putting my name in. And what had happened is they switched studios. The one studio that I had done the test for, it didn't pan out.
Oh, I see.
So I kind of got axed from the actors to call. So about 6 months later, finally, my buddy kept dropping my name. Finally, I got called in. They were doing testing over at this other studio. The stunt coordinator called me up and said, hey, I hear you're pretty good at this motion capture stuff. Can you come in and help us do some tests? We're still in the testing phase. And then I went in, and then immediately I got kind of sucked in. Because I think my experience in the motion capture world, for a lot of, especially at that time, performers who would get pulled into that stage. One, James Cameron's pretty intimidating. When you first get to know him and first get on set, and then you see all this technology, and a lot of the performers just didn't know what that was, how to operate in those scenes. So I got on set. I felt, this is home. I'd been already doing the motion capture stuff for almost a decade up to that time. And And I
You're
hadn't,
probably one of the most experienced dudes working in that part of the business at the time. I mean,
yeah, at the time, even now, I'd say, look at
yeah.
the years I've racked up in the motion capture field, from owning my own studio
Hmm.
to actually uh, being in just, I don't know, at this point, hundreds of games probably. Then at that time, still several games. And so and also the sort of the stunt coordinator and the type of work we were doing, it was very intense. It was very fast paced. And and I had my experience working with Jackie Chan and Sammo Hung in the Hong Kong film industry, which
Hmm.
is, to me, it felt like home. When I got on the set of
Right.
Avatar, it felt like all of the Hong Kong peeps mixed in with all the motion capture peeps, and it just was like, oh, this is home. This is where I belong. Where that can be, again, a lot of very
Very
intimidating
intimidating
for a
for an
lot of
actor.
other actors. So they were
Yeah.
actors were coming and going, and then my friend kept recommending me. Once I got on there, they're like, "Oh, this guy's, he gets it," and they kept asking me to stay, and then eventually they're like, "So Reuben, we want you to be the main stunt double for Jake Sully." All right, that works.
Jackpot. Yeah.
So then
I'll
that was
take it.
job security for the next 4 years.
My 4 years it took. Holy shit. I didn't realize it took that long. I mean, I knew it was like over a year, but my God, 4 years.
Yeah, it was on and off for first. The first year was like solid. I was on set every day, and then they took the crew down to New Zealand to do the live action shoots. And
Hmm.
I had, at the time, I was running a production company, a motion capture company, and I was producing the video game Resident Evil 6, 5, 5.
Hmm.
And when they went to New Zealand, then we were already in pre-production, and then I had 6 months of motion capture on that game, so I
Yeah.
stayed. And then right when we wrapped up the capture portion and started getting to post, they returned from New Zealand, and then it was I was on between my production company and on and off doing pickup shots for Avatar for another 3 years.
3 years, 3 years of pickup shots.
It was
Wow.
literally 3 years of pickup shots. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember, 3 days of pickup shots, be like, oh boy, we got our work cut out for us. You get your schedule and it's 3 years. Okay. Yeah. My God, the movie came out though. So,
Yeah. It
I
was
mean, a
fun.
lot happened to you while you were on set and working. I mean, like, first of all, the movie itself, I don't know who hasn't seen it yet. I think everyone has seen it, or they should have seen it. Although once in a while I hear someone say, I finally watched Avatar, and I'm like,
I know, I do the
fuck
same.
were you waiting for? But it's such a great movie. It has so many profound messages to the human race, especially right now. It's
Absolutely.
more relevant than ever. But we talked a little bit about some of the things that came into your awareness during that time, and how I think I and you tell me if I'm right, if I understood our conversation correctly. It was kind of the first part of a pivot that you did in your life, where you've kind of started to take a different direction with interests and work.
Majorly, yeah. Well, one thing, so on Avatar, we had a lot of free time as a performer. Um, we were at the time, Jim was really pushing the motion capture technology. I mean, he pushes the technology in any endeavor he takes on, and especially with that project, that it was technologically. It was just a lot there, a lot to work with the motion capture, real time, everything he was doing. So we had constant, we call them crashes, the computer crashes. All right, actors, go in the back waiting room, and
Mm,
the AD would yell out, and we'd go back, and we're like, okay, how long are we back here? And sometimes hours.
yeah.
So that right around that time is when YouTube started coming out, and this was before they started censoring everything. Uh, this is when YouTube was actually
Yeah.
cool. And after we got through all the cat videos, we then, which we probably watched every cat video that existed at that time. We probably watched every YouTube video that existed at that
You're
time
like,
period.
when does YouTube part 2 come out? Because we finished part 1.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's what happened is Zeitgeist and Stephen Greer's Disclosure Project
Oh yeah.
Loose Change, and all these documentary films that I had never heard of were released on YouTube. So we had access to this stuff. And myself and the team of actors in the back, our minds were getting blown. Like we were
Yeah.
watching this stuff, just like, oh, what? No way! That can't. The towers? Who? Oh my God!
Yeah.
So it was really sort of red pilling us. Simultaneously, we're working on a film that has to do, our homework as actors is I had to learn about indigenous cultures. I
Mm-hmm.
had to learn physically, how they dressed and everything. A lot of Cameron had on set uh, posted all over the stage all these different pictures from different indigenous
Oh
tribes
wow.
around the world, and using their jewelry and how they dressed in different modalities of
Yeah.
from the types of weaponry they had, from knives for cutting fish and
Mm-hmm.
to everything. So all of that was like taken into consideration in designing the Navi. And he encouraged us to look at all these different indigenous cultures and implement, their ideas, their teachings, and their belief systems, and as much as we could as performers, so we could then
Yeah.
come out into the performance, because that's how we're performing. We're
Right.
this Navi, this indigenous race of blue
Yeah.
men with cattails and ears.
Yeah.
Um, and we had to be as realistic as possible. And Jim was a stickler for detail.
Yeah.
So I learned about ayahuasca. I learned about indigenous teachings in general and the belief systems, and all this stuff was happening simultaneously as we're getting red pilled behind the scenes
Mm-hmm.
from these documentaries. And then lo and behold, a couple years into it, maybe a year or two into it, in 2007, I had a sighting, which really rocked my world. I'd already sort of started the research, going down the Stephen Greer path,
Yeah.
and getting red pilled from his stuff. And once I had this sighting, my mind was blown.
So tell me about the sighting, dude. You gotta tell me about the sighting now.
Well, it's pretty basic. I mean, if you look at it compared to all the sightings out there
Yeah.
now. I was just one rare weekday. I had a day off from Avatar, and I had, because of my busy schedule from working on all day on Avatar and then going to my studio and working. We were on Skype calls to Japan every night and working these crazy hours. My laundry had like built up, and I was like, okay, I'm staying home today. I got to do laundry. Like, there's no, this is the only time to do it. So I lived in a little 1-bedroom apartment in Glendale, and took the laundry house was like just outside, a couple doors down. You have to like actually exit the building, go down, put the laundry in, and I popped out of the laundry unit and looked in the sky, and I saw all these little white specks in the sky.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of squinted. I was like, what is that? Are those bugs? And I'm trying to get a distance, a depth perception of what's going on there. And then I saw a plane fly through, and the plane was before me. So I was like, no, those aren't bugs. Bugs would not be doing that. And then the more I looked, the more they started appearing. And they looked almost like stars. And I'm like, how do stars show up in a clear blue sky in the middle of the day? And how come there's more popping up now? I'm looking in the sky. I'm like, oh my God. And this went on for quite some time. I was like, okay, I can't take my eyes off of this. This is phenomenal. Whatever this is happening is incredible. And I just kept watching it for about 45 minutes.
Wow, dude. Wow.
These things, and they slowly moved in the sky much faster than stars would, but it seemed almost as if they were tracking with the rotation of the Earth in a sense. Right. But they were heading east, which wait, let's see if the rotation of the Earth is so yeah, that's sort of how stars would go, but they were moving like in 45 minutes. They did cover quite a bit of territory. Right. And then they started disappearing one by one. Just boom, boom, boom.
Just kind of winking out. Could they have been satellites? Did you find out if they could have been satellites?
I guess they could have, but I don't think satellites move, right? And this,
Yeah, I mean, technically they're moving pretty fast, I think,
yeah,
around,
yeah. I
So
I wouldn't imagine there'd be satellites.
yeah,
So
I don't think they could have been because I think satellites could really do a full rotation in.
yeah, and
Yeah,
even and for 45 minutes they were just kind of there.
right.
And anyways, after that they disappeared. I was like, whoa, what was that? I actually in real time I called my friend, my employee at the time. And I said, he was my studio was in Burbank. I said, go outside, check this out. He couldn't see anything, and I was
Oh,
like,
really?
I don't. And in my mind, I thought, okay, this is a game changer. The world is going to be after tonight. Everybody knows this. This is going to be on the news. The whole world is going to be in a whole new paradigm after
Yeah,
this. That night, nothing on the news. I was like checking the news
yeah,
there. I was like, oh man, what happened? Okay, 10. I was like, well, watch the 10 o'clock news. Nothing on the 10 o'clock news. All right, well, maybe in the next morning in the papers, and then I was checking
nothing.
the papers, nothing. I was like, what? I couldn't have been the only one to see this.
Right.
It's insane. Um, and then I started searching on the internet for, UFO videos
Yeah.
and UFO stuff. So then I started seeing all this stuff pour in. And the closest thing I've seen, there has been a sighting after that in New York. I don't know if you were familiar with that, the one that the ABC News cameras had picked up.
I probably saw the video of it. Yeah.
So that is very similar to what I saw. These white.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I remember that video. Yeah.
So in at that time, there's also a lot of videos from Mexico sightings that had similar phenomenon. So I'm like, okay, I'm not crazy. I'm not the only one. There are videos of the similar phenomenon that I've seen. And anyways, having that experience just really, as my good friend Jeremy Corbell says, weaponized my curiosity.
Yeah.
So now I'm full on, okay, I'm back on the Avatar set. I'm telling everybody what I saw, thinking that maybe they think I'm crazy.
Yeah.
I'm like, I know what I saw. And that's when the rabbit hole spirals really started.
That's awesome. I mean, of course, Bashar would tell you that you didn't see those for nothing. And I'm sure anyway, but
yeah,
that's so cool, man.
My major red pill moment, because since then, I mean, there had already I've been conditioned for it too.
Yeah.
The videos, working on Avatar. And again, prior to that, I had, my mom was into a cult and was into some weird belief systems as I was.
Yeah.
So I had some exposure, but I had put all of that into the crazy
The crazy section, filed it away. Yeah.
Filed it away. Didn't want to go there. I just want to be an action star, working on movies,
Yeah.
Jackie Chan fight stuff.
Right.
That was the focus. And then that all started to shift during this Avatar experience.
Yeah. That's amazing, dude. It's amazing how, you think your goals are one thing and you put them on this pedestal. And then as you learn more and experience more, you realize that wasn't actually a pedestal. It was actually, in a way it was lower than where you really ended up, where you're going to end up,
Oh, totally. Yeah.
As far as depth goes,
Who would have thought? I mean, yeah, especially where we are now with show and with everything. It's just, it truly is. You follow a thread and you don't know where it's going to go.
No, you don't. So that leads me to my next, I want to talk to you about how you, I believe that was likely the initial catalyst. And you mentioned that you got into Dr. Greer's work. And I'm personally, I'm a fan of Dr. Greer, as you know, we've spoken about him before. But tell me about the citizens hearing disclosure and how you. I know you got 40 witnesses, right? 40 witnesses to give testimony to 6 former members of Congress. Is that do I have the details right?
That's it. So my curiosity was weaponized. My buddy Jeremy, who I'd worked with in 2007. So Jeremy, before he was the UFO guy, he was
Labels.
he
Yeah.
was the Bob Lazar guy. But on Joe's show, Joe Rogan, he's been on a few times. He's
Yeah.
definitely Joe's UFO go-to man. So before that, he was a jiu-jitsu practitioner, teacher, and he had come up with his own system called quantum jiu-jitsu. And there was some really interesting moves at that time, some videos out that he was sort of blowing away the martial arts world with these really unique jiu-jitsu techniques that he called quantum jiu-jitsu that got a lot of us action martial art performers intrigued.
Interested. Yeah.
So on 2 occasions, randomly, I got to work with him, and he was brought in to teach me his moves so I could, because I was going to perform them as doubling the actor or the stunt coordinator, the fight choreographer wanted to incorporate his moves. So they're like, Reuben, learn his moves. So Jeremy and I were friends way before the UFO thing, where he's teaching me his unique style of
his quantum jiu-jitsu. That's
jiu-jitsu.
Crazy, dude.
So,
oh, I love that. Now I understand how he ended up on Joe Rogan. I mean,
yeah.
my
So I'm
God.
learning quantum jiu-jitsu. I'm learning his moves. I'm performing them, and then we kind of say goodbye. And then a couple years later, I'm in another film. There's Jeremy again. Reuben, how's it going? You know, and all right, what are we gonna learn today? And he's teaching me some more moves. And then he goes away again. And then all of a sudden, I think back in 2010, 9 or 10, I'm watching a video, and this UFO video. And by this time, I'm red pilled. I've been to the C5s with Greer. I've
Nice.
kind of I'm already there. I'm in it. And then I see a UFO video, and I hear this voice. I'm like, that voice sounds really familiar. And then he's like, holy shit, UFO, you know, and I'm like, that voice sounds so familiar. And then I listen to it, and I'm like, oh my God, that's Jeremy.
That's Jeremy. Yeah.
I don't know if you know about this. There was in 2010, there was it's called the Silver, he called it Silver Surfer. It's like, look at that, it's a Silver Surfer. And it was the Silver Surfer UFO that made its way onto the local news. And other people had filmed it too. Jeremy sort of had the best footage. And then, so then Bill Nye, the science guy, was trying to debunk it and said it was seahorses.
Yeah.
Somebody superimposed seahorses on the video, did this whole thing.
There's nothing scientific about Bill Nye. When are people going to realize this?
At all. And then Jeremy, being the inquisitive mind, wanting to know what he saw, actually went and did the hardcore research. Turns out it was the Red Bull skydiving team. So it wasn't a UFO
Right.
at all. So Jeremy actually debunked his own video. And, you know, put that out and said, you know, Bill Nye, you're an idiot.
Superimposed
sea monkeys, you know, and all these people from different angles had this video, and they're all superimposing sea monkeys, whatever. Yeah. But I had seen the video, I'd heard the voice. I said, Jeremy, was that you? He's like, yeah. He's like, are you into UFOs? He's like, yeah, man, me too. You know? Like, awesome. All right.
Yeah.
What's going on? And he's like, yeah. So then he was way into it longer than I had been. With the Bob Lazar stuff, and you know, if you watch his movies, he tells you. And, so right away we started exchanging notes, and we became buddies. And then you know, he said, hey, there's this UFO, what's it called, the UFO coffee shop in Santa Monica. I forgot the name of it. They're doing some interesting get-togethers there. You wanna go hang out there? And I was like, yeah, let's go. And we started hanging out with these researchers and different people. And eventually we started just getting immersed in that crowd of what we know now is like the hardcore research folks. Yeah. So we have, you know, Stephen Greer, Linda Moulton Howe, Richard Dolan,
all the bigger names. Yeah.
Laura Eisenhower, she was at the UFO Cafe. There's a lot of us inquisitive mind people that are now sort of the talking heads for this the UFO community, ET community, and that's when I just dove in deep. And then I met a gentleman who had this idea to do a citizen hearing on disclosure to bring in actual witnesses. And the sort of the theme was if the government won't do its job, then we have to ourselves.
Yeah.
So taking 6 former members of the Congress, a guy named Joe Buckman, who was already in politics a little bit. He was running for the libertarian, running for Congress in the Libertarian Party from Utah. He had connections to these Congress members, brought them together amongst all these witnesses that some of the other folks that we had worked with had connections to, brought them all together, and Washington, D.C. for 5 days at the National Press Club.
5 days it took, right? How did you settle on your 40 witnesses? Like, first of all, how many did you end up kind of like picking from, and how did you settle on these 40?
Actually, I left that to the other guys.
Okay.
For me, I was just putting the logistics together, dealing with budgets and putting I was more of the production film guy. So when I was new to a lot of the witnesses and stuff, I had read about and heard about a lot of the cases. But for me, I just did the production side, and kind of let the other guys, the experts, do a lot of that stuff. And my job was just making sure it all happened at the right time in the right place. And budgets were an issue. We had funding, but issues with funding at the last minute. I'm sure, as you know, being a producer and putting any kind of production together, there's always curveballs thrown at you at the last minute. So we were dealing with a lot of that, but it all came together. And now we're about to get. I'm actually rendering out my last file tonight. We're about to get another, I should say, a re-release of the footage in a much grandiose way.
So, nice, man. That's
good timing.
Perfect timing. So we before we part ways, we'll get more solid information on that, because we're definitely going to include a link to this new one, however people can track it, and the original, which is, fascinating. And what was you, after hearing all the testimony, I know Dr. Greer focused on military, people was
majority of it. So the idea was, okay, we wanted to, this is, a media event in a sense. So we wanted to, and we hired Jeremy. He was going to direct the film called Truth Embargo, which was sort of revolving around the hearings and some of the witnesses and some of the things that were going on. So Jeremy was going to be our director, and just again, some funding issues and things like this. So we lost the funding for the movie, but which was supposed to ramp up right after the hearings. Basically, we had to allocate everything at the last minute just to make the hearings happen. So, but Jeremy was there at the hearings the whole time, and taking notes, interviewing. We have some footage from a lot of behind the scenes footage from that. But sorry, what your question was about? How do we get them together? Or
well, I guess my question was.
Sorry, I got it. So the focus was really how do we make the biggest impact in the shortest amount of time to the American people about the evidence that we have, which there is a mountain of it. So we decided to kind of stay away from the abduction scenarios, because that's a heavy, there's tons of evidence. There's lots of testimony about that, but that can that's like going from 0 to 1,000 in your Tesla. And we thought, well, maybe people aren't ready for the Tesla version yet. Let's back it up and And
Start with the Ford Model T.
yeah, let's start with the Ford Model T. That's probably where most people are gonna,
Yeah.
be at with this stuff. So we just went through the basics, with the actual credible sightings, not sightings, but evidence. I would say, what's the word? Uh,
Credible.
cases in a sense,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they go much beyond just sightings. Much more beyond sightings. There's radar records. There's a lot of times there's soil samples taken from some of these. In the case of Bob Salas and the SAC nuke bases, you have several bases that have gone offline, and you have documentation within government documents as well as the witnesses to talk about to verify that these things actually happen. So and radar records and all this stuff. So we wanted to go with the most credible, most well documented and evidence-based cases as we could, to really hit the point across to these members of Congress and the people watching, that this phenomenon is real, and that there's a mountain of evidence if you choose to look at it, and that there is a media truth embargo, which at the time I was a bit naive, thinking, okay, this is the whole world's going to see this, going back to my 2007 sighting. This is going to be all over the news,
Yeah.
everybody's going to see this. And we're doing it at the National Press Club. We did press releases. We did all this stuff. And for the first 4 or 5 days, all we had was ridicule, and the media was making fun of us. Tinfoil hat get together in Washington, D.C. These are the headlines.
Oh yeah.
And even the Congress members was like, what the hell is going on here, man? The media is just, flying through their teeth about what the Congress members said. The media was pushing the whole thing that each of these Congress members were getting paid $20,000, a lot of money to sit on this panel. And it's like, well, actually $20,000 for a week plus of work. They had to do their homework ahead of time. It's not a lot of money for a congressperson of that stature in this type of setting, but the media blew it up and saying, oh, they're getting paid, blah, 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 all this thing. So that's when I started to realize, oh, there is a truth embargo.
Yeah.
The media is completely controlled by special interests that want to suppress this information. And it wasn't until the very last day the New York Times did the first positive article on the phenomenon. It was on the back page of the Sunday paper, where they said the Huffington Post was doing a lot of great work because we had Lee Spiegel working there at the time, and Lee himself was already well informed, and he's well researched in the UFO phenomenon, and has done a lot of public speaking and goes to a lot of the UFO events. So we had him on our side, and he was really pushing through Huffington Post what up to dates, like, okay, this panel happened, these witnesses are talking. That was great. But every other newspaper except for Al Jazeera at the time, basically,
Except for Al Jazeera,
they were all tearing us a new one and just giving, talking crap.
but the New York Times had.
New York Times did that on the last day. They initially they released a thing like tinfoil hat thing, but then there was a guy, I think Leslie Kane, at the time, because Leslie Kane, who broke the New York Times story, the 2017, the Tic Tac UFO event that now is world famous, and we have the military videos to prove it, and all in the military actually acknowledging both the Navy and the Pentagon.
I've been telling my guests, I'm like, it's okay. The government said it's okay. You're allowed to believe in UFOs now, okay?
Exactly. And thanks to Leslie Kane and the folks over at the New York Times for getting that story out. But because she wasn't a fan of all of the witnesses and people being at the hearings. She was like, well, we, to get this out in the public, we need, because I guess I'm looking at the hearings. I don't think there was any real questionable witnesses, but depending on your perspective, because they go far out there with
they go far out
with their testimony. Yeah. So it can be mistaken, I guess her perspective was for breaking the ice, so to say, and that's kind of what we were trying to do. Even though we pulled back on the whole abduction scenario and everything else, even she thought we were going a little too far, that we should have pulled the reins back a little bit. So she did not participate, but she did help as far as in the media sense, saying some positive things and getting the word out. So
Well, now's the time, dude. It's great you're getting this back out. It's great there's going to be a re-release because
yeah, I think timing is
the
really
timing is great now, and the public is going to be much more receptive and willing to hear these things with a different ear.
Yeah.
I mean, unfortunately, they should have heard it before, but you know, that's the society we're living in at this time.
Well, I actually asked James Cameron about this. This is back in 2010. We were kind of all hanging out in the hotel room after NAB, and I said, Jim, hats off. This was right after the release of Avatar. I said, I think Avatar has shifted the consciousness of the planet,
Mm-hmm.
or it's in the process of shifting it. And he goes, no, I don't see it that way. He says, I think the consciousness of the planet was ready to receive Avatar. And that if it had come out any earlier, it probably would have tanked at the box office. And I really thought about that, and I still think about it today, thinking, yeah, it's really like a double-edged sword, or the chicken before the egg. It really is that kind of, well, the audience has to be ready for it. It will also, yes, shift the consciousness, but the consciousness has to be ready to receive it for it to have any type of proper effect. So yes, I think we released Citizen Hearing, 8 years too early, and and now we'll see where it goes. But
yeah. That's a phenomenal story about James Cameron, and the fact that he was, I mean, look, he's highly intelligent dude with massive resources and a willingness to go where literally nobody's gone before. I mean, like, he's just like,
totally.
yeah, okay, I want to get to the bottom of the Mariana Trench.
Yeah.
So I'm going to need some people to help me make that happen. And he does it, I mean, it's amazing. Not many people can follow that through like that. So, and he's absolutely, of course he's right. I think you're both right. I think it's that thinking feeling loop. It's like the same thing, it's like, well, do you think something first or do you feel it first? Well, the truth is that each thought and each feeling is this connected, and I feel like that's, he's talking about it. I don't think you were wrong with what you said, but I don't think he's wrong with what he said either, because they're so connected.
It's a two-way pump, I like to say.
Yeah.
It's always a two-way pump.
Two-way pump. Yeah. You got any good James Cameron stories for us?
Well, there's that one. There's this, I don't know if I should share that
one. Come on now.
He's a fascinating guy. I try to put myself in his shoes sometimes, and I'm just like, man, this is what a as we were just saying, he's highly intelligent, and the resources he has at his dispense enable him to go deeper in many ways. So I think he knows a lot more than he lets people know what he knows. And I've tried to pry in there a little bit. And I've kind of gotten the, I don't know what you're talking about, wink, wink thing. So I'm like, okay, which is he's very smart too, in that sense that he knows that there are people like me with weaponized curiosity that are going to try to pick and pull anything out of him that they can get. So he's very careful with his words. So I don't have any like smoking gun stories.
Did he ever talk about UFOs at all?
We did a little bit, but he was very elusive, and
he's probably learned how to do that really well.
I think so. So I think you have to be at that position in that position if he were to outright say, "Oh yeah, I had this thing," and and then word gets out,
Yeah.
and then you're all of a sudden, you turn into a Kanye West.
Yeah.
That's you got to be
Or
careful,
you're branded as, yeah. I mean,
especially
less
at that
so.
time. We're
Oh
more
my God. Yeah.
we're more accepting of our nutty celebrities right now
Hmm.
more than ever. But at that time, I had a hard time, in a sense, coming out in 2010, just trying, hard time thing. It wasn't hard to come out. It was just hard to, um, in my own mind, all the barriers there, and the idea that
Yeah.
I'd be shunned for talking about ETs, and I might not have a career if I talk about ETs. All of that going through my head, which was at the end of the day just a self-created obstacle, because when I did come out about my experiences and the ET stuff, nothing happened, nobody cared, and life went on. But us, in the limelight, and especially somebody like Jim, I'm sure is very, very careful of
Oh yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
So no smoking guns, unfortunately. Sorry.
That's all right. I had to ask. You understand. Um, so, I mean, this shirt I'm wearing, very comfortable shirt that Reuben gave me on a retreat that we were lucky enough, and he was intuitive enough to schedule. Literally, I think it was literally the week before, basically the whole world went into a lockdown back in March of this year. So, and we had a fantastic time in Hawaii on a retreat that he planned. And the way I found Reuben was through a show which he produced and developed called Interview with EDs, right? Right.
Yep. Interview with
Extra dimensionals.
Yep.
And it's a fantastic, trailblazing show, very unique, really the first of its kind that I'd ever seen. And I was, as you know, if you've been listening, I had Daryl Anka on the show and Michaela Sheldon on the show. Well, Michaela, I actually discovered through Reuben's show. Michaela happens also to be our top most viewed video right now. She's such a sweetheart, and she's an amazing human being. And so this show did this remarkable thing where it brought all these phenomenal channels and talents and mediums together, and Reuben would go out and sit down with them and interview them. And some of the material that has come from the show is just, it's amazing. It's had a profound impact on my life. And how did you end up going from kind of like gathering witnesses for this event to kind of the opposite end of the ET spectrum, in this show that you developed, where you're interviewing human beings who are claiming to be channeling ETs or higher evolved beings?
Yeah, that, so we covered my dabbling with the evidence-based research, the citizen hearing, which will get re-released, so everybody can kind of go into there and see that. So I was running with my buddy. We were running this out of my office. I said I had a motion capture studio, visual effects motion capture studio in the marina, which we built out. We started in 2007, 6, 7-ish, no, 5, I don't know. But we expanded to this much larger space around 2009, 10. And I don't know if you've been on a motion capture stage, or maybe you've seen some in behind the scenes of like Avatar. They're quite large rooms with these cameras and sensors. And I was like, I have the space, let's turn it into a meeting room, a screening room. So I started screening films and documentaries. We did the LA premiere of Thrive on 11/11/11 at our studio. And I was holding monthly ET media meetup groups.
That's awesome.
So we had, and we opened it to the public, because they started at the UFO Cafe, but they went out of business. And I was like, well, I've got a space. Maybe we could do something over at my space. And sure enough, once we started, with about a handful of like 10 people, they started growing exponentially each month, more and more people. And at one time, I think we had like 80 people, and we had all these different. Well, every month we'd have a guest speaker, which would be someone from the UFO community. Like, let's see, we had Don Schmidt. We had who is a researcher from who's written many books with Stan Freeman and others on the Roswell phenomenon. We had Richard Dolan. We had Barbara Lamb. We had Yvonne Smith, who are hypnotherapists who do a lot of regression work. So we had all these guests coming in. I was getting to know the community. We opened the doors to anybody who wanted to come, and we kind of the thing that we put out there was we want people who are in the Hollywood industry, whether you're a grip or a PA or an actor or a producer, whatever it is, just to get to educate the Hollywood groups as much as we could.
Yeah. I mean, in talking about millions of people, when you're talking
Yeah,
about that community in LA. So,
trying
yeah.
to influence the influencers.
Hmm.
And get as much evidence out to these, because we thought it might be inspiration for films or whatever, just to have the conversation. And so Daryl Anka, Wendy Kennedy, and Nora Harold used to show up at these events.
Oh my God.
I didn't know they were channelers. I just thought they were, just Hollywood people. And Daryl worked, he
Yeah,
would.
Daryl is I mean, he is a Hollywood person. He's
Yeah.
not, yeah.
So we'd pass the mic around and everybody do their introduction, and then it'd come to Daryl and he goes, "Yeah, I work in
Real
visual effects.
soft-spoken. Yeah.
Yeah, super software. I work in visual effects, and I've had some experiences." And then he'd just pass the mic, not knowing he was this amazing channeler of this
Hmm.
being called Bashar. He never went into that at the meetings. And same with Nora and Wendy. They were like, well, Nora would go. She's like, well, I'm an interdimensional channel
Yeah,
of,
Nora's not shy. Yeah.
so she would go in there, and then Wendy would talk about she's had some experiences, not really going into the whole channeling thing. So this continues for a few years. More, I'm doing my screenings. I'm getting to know the cases, the evidence-based stuff. I produce the citizen hearing. And I noticed that a lot of people, including the abductees or the people who were temporarily detained, as
Hmm.
Bashar,
Yeah.
were some of them were having positive experiences, some of them were having negative experiences. But the more I would talk and the more I would investigate and the more people I interviewed personally, the more I saw that there was a benevolent, the phenomenon. A lot of people were on the fence. A lot of people thought they were demonic and whatever. But
Hmm.
no matter at the evidence, when you look at the collective evidence, to me, through logical lens, it just seemed more of a benevolent type experience or a type of phenomenon. It
Hmm.
did not seem like this malicious, benevolent thing that a lot of people were talking about. Even the abductees themselves said, well, once I Kim Carlsberg, a famous abductee who was the producer of Baywatch, or a co-creator of Baywatch, she had lifelong traumatic experiences with the Greys, and she said one day somehow she had gotten the guidance or gotten a message that she just said, no more, just I want this to stop now, and commanded to stop, and it stopped. And I'm like, how could they be benevolent if you command them to stop and they stop? And not only her, but many people have said the same thing. And I tell people all the time who come to me because of me being out there in the public with this stuff,
Yeah.
that if they are having a problem with this stuff, just tell it to stop, go away. You don't want this in your life anymore. And sure enough, as soon as they do that, boom, no
Free will
more,
is an amazing,
no more
powerful
negative
thing.
experiences, no more craziness. So to me, that says, okay, this is a benevolent phenomenon. However, many of the researchers, many of the industry people kept leaning toward this malevolent side, even on
Of
Ancient
course.
Aliens, and all these people were saying this is you know, it could be this evil thing and they're gonna come and rape and pillage us. And I'm like, you know, if anybody who looks at the research and the evidence, that's not the story that's being painted. So I was getting very frustrated with the narrative that was being put
Yeah.
out by all of these media types or researchers, and even you go and you talk to the researchers and they're like, no, I know it's benevolent because of the evidence. I'm like, but you're
Yeah.
enabling this malevolent storyline through your, you know, your public, your basically
Yeah.
people being wishy-washy. And I know what it is. It's people don't want to be, they want to be accepted into the community. So
Right.
the UFO community, you know, it's in a sense, it's, you know, virtue signaling for UFOs, what these people are doing.
Yeah.
And I was getting frustrated as hell with that. And I said, this is crazy. You guys are purposely putting out a negative narrative, even though you know it's a benevolent one,
Mm-hmm.
and just so you can get accepted into these, you know, you can get on the radio shows, you can go, you can sell your books and do all this BS. Like, no way, that's not the way. I want to be more, I want to tell a positive story. We've effed this world enough
Right.
through telling this negative story. And as I was learning more, I got turned on to the Bashar material.
Mm.
Like, hey, that guy, he comes to my meetings. And at first it was
Yeah,
like,
that guy. This
oh,
looks
this guy,
familiar.
you know, hello, good day. And he's like really eccentric and wearing his Hawaiian shirts. And it's a hard pill for a lot of people to swallow initially. And even me, I'm like, okay, what's this guy? But when you listen to the material, I'm like, that's the story that I want to tell.
Just
That's
listen
it.
to the material. You know, I mean, like,
Yeah. It fit with everything that he said. uh, Started to fill in the holes to this story that was unfolding in my own research,
mm,
during my own research. And then it really hit home when I one day after the meetings closed, everybody kind of hangs out. We even had a sighting in the parking lot. I didn't see it, I was inside, but a lot of people, I think the ETs were definitely knowing who was
yeah.
showing up things. So Wendy Kennedy stayed one night, and we were just, as everybody's mingling and talking, and she was going into some of her experiences. I was really curious about the abduction phenomenon at that time, and I was like, okay, tell me about your experiences. I was kind of giving her a little mini interview, and then she said, well, you know, I don't see it as an abduction as a negative thing because it's a soul contract.
That's
And
right.
when
Yeah.
she said soul contract, it was like a light bulb went off in my head. And I was like, oh, wait a minute, what soul contract? Wait, I don't know what that is, but it sounds right.
Resonated, right? It
It resonates.
resonated.
I'm
Yeah.
like, tell me more. And then she started explaining, well, she channels these beings and this is what they say. And I'm like, okay, that's fascinating. So then I started checking out Wendy's material, started checking out Nora's material, Daryl,
Mhm.
obviously. And then I started to see how what was being channeled fit in all the holes of my research, evidence-based research, my interviewing other abductees, um, who in their stories, you know, were here and there and all this stuff. And then it sort of everything started to fit. And I said, okay, I want to tell a positive story about this phenomenon. And everything that these channelers are saying seems to be positive and it seems to be filling in all the holes. That's where I need to go. So my curiosity took me down that path. And that's when I started developing the show. I had interviewed the first Nora and Wendy, and it was going to be a film initially. I had started
Mhm.
thinking, and then at that time, what was it called? A film came out around that time about channeling, and I was like, okay, this film is there. And after the first interview with, I actually interviewed Nora first.
Yeah. And that was at least two segments, right?
Kind of. I did a shorter interview with her, and then I went back and I interviewed Wendy, and all this information came through, and I was thinking, how am I going to cut this down to just a 5-minute snippet? And then that's when I decided, okay, this has got to be a series. I've got to put this out in long form because the information is so good. I can't leave any of this on the cutting room floor because there's just so much to unpack. And that's when I switched it over to a series. And then I went back and interviewed Nora in a longer form.
I see. Okay.
And then that's it. Just went from there, you know. And since 2014, I've been interviewing these people.
So have you? And I know the answer to some of these questions, but I'm gonna ask them out anyway.
Yeah.
And if you're comfortable answering them, which I don't imagine you're gonna
I'm deep down the rabbit hole.
shy away from that anything at this point, but you know,
That's
one of the things that we love talking about,
yeah,
and I love getting into is you know, plant ceremonies and ayahuasca, DMT, and because there's been so many people who have experienced interdimensional beings on these journeys, you know, that's naturally the next questions. Have you had any experience, you know?
a lot of experience there of recent. So with my journey, I had never dabbled in hallucinogenics or any type of mind altering substances until I had already started the show. I had already been doing meditation and breath work and qigong, tai chi. So I had a martial arts background from doing movie martial arts, but just curious in that realm. Bruce Lee and his philosophies being a major influencer in my life and a lot of the things that I've done and continue to do. So what was, I think, super cool in my experience is I had been seeking out ayahuasca. I'd learned about it on the set of Avatar. You know, Jim, there's a deleted scene if anybody wants to look up on Avatar. I think you can see it on the internet. You know, Jake Sully ceremony or
Oh shit! Wow.
It's not a fully rendered. Somehow it got released, and I remember being in the ceremony. He eats this psychedelic worm, is administered to him in the ceremony. But I was one of the members in the ceremony, helping to facilitate. And Jim is explaining the scene. He's like, okay, this scene, it's based off this plant medicine in the jungle of the Amazon called ayahuasca, and it's a psychedelic thing. And this is good. So I'm learning. That's the first time I learned about ayahuasca.
Wow. James Cameron was the one who you first heard the word ayahuasca from.
Yeah.
That's
so I'm
crazy.
like fascinated by this concept, this idea. Wow, why would somebody go and do that? You know, so my curiosity was weaponized then about ayahuasca, and the more research I started doing into the ET realms and getting red pilled, you know, following that thread, it kept leading me back to a spiritual thread, and then into indigenous teachings and into plant medicines, which were used to heal, to do different things. And take people on this spiritual journey. So the more all the research started crisscrossing, and the more I started talking to these channeled beings, I would ask them about plant medicines. This is even before I tried any of them, and I would get more and more information about it. And then eventually I said, okay, I've got to go into those realms. I've got to experience this for myself. And after a lot of research because I was a stickler being a martial artist in sports nutrition and everything, I was like, I can't do anything that's going to damage my body. And then, you know, I had never even had smoked marijuana or taken any cannabis up until, you know, like 2014, 15.
Wow.
And then, but realizing, oh, you know, it's non-addictive. There are healing properties to these medicines, to mushrooms and cannabis, and to plant medicines like ayahuasca and wachuma, which is the San Pedro cactus medicine, and peyote, and all of these. I started really diving deep into researching, and then eventually sitting in ceremony and taking. And then having my own experiences, which were just, again, confirming all this information I had already amassed, and all the dots connecting. So it's been an amazing journey, and I think having this base, a solid base in in martial arts, meditation, qigong, um, and just the channeling material and the curiosity and getting amassing all this information. By the time I got into the plant realms, they were very easy for me to navigate.
Yeah.
Some people can get lost in them. It can be quite overwhelming,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm so grateful for my journey, kind of taking me every step along the way, just enough to handle, okay, going back to the whole James Cameron Avatar experience, prior to that working with Jackie Chan, prior to that working with Power Rangers,
Yeah.
you know, each step along, if I had skipped a step, I would have, failed. If I had my Jackie Chan Hong Kong motion capture experience, by the time I got to the Jackie Chan or the James Cameron opportunity, I would have been booted off the set like many of the other actors.
Yeah.
So it's been a nice organic step up. And so when plant medicines came about, again, I had researched mushrooms for 2 years before I had the courage to even take them.
See, you could have just did them when you were in high school and you didn't know better and couldn't
I
research anyway.
I skipped that phase. I was such a stickler for, I guess one of my abilities, I look at it now as an ability, at the time I didn't realize it, is I'm a highly focused person. So whenever I get into something, we have terms for these geeks, nerds. In Japanese they call them otakus, like Star Trek convention people.
Right.
When you're into something and you go full in,
right.
Wear the costume, you put the whole thing on, and you that's me. I blend in. I go to anime and Comic Cons because those are my peeps.
Me too.
I fit right in with that crowd because if you're into it, you got to go full in.
Right.
Jeremy says, DPB. He says, Reuben, you're as DPB as they come. Your dick isn't the peanut butter. You're fucking nuts. So, and I'm extra chunky and extra creamy. I go full in and deeper than anybody else.
That's awesome.
But I love it.
Man. I mean, Rumi said, what you are seeking is seeking you. And it's so true. It's so true. And sometimes it takes what feels like a risk of doing something that is out of the comfort zone to realize that you've been ready to do it and it's been waiting for you. I had similar experience with ayahuasca and with DMT, and so I understand that, and I know exactly what you mean when you say because I was a little scared too. You hear things and about plant ceremonies and it turning into something very scary. And I had a good friend reach out to me, and who really had never, done any psychedelics and never really got into any plant ceremonies, but has been on a very spiritual journey, healed herself from stage 2 breast cancer, and was in Mexico with a friend who was very good friends with a woman who held ceremonies. And they asked if she wanted to do it, and she was like, sure, sure. And so when I told her I was a little apprehensive, she was like, Faust, she's like, the more work you've done on yourself, the more bliss you'll find in the ceremony. And I was like, oh, okay. I know I've been doing that, I know I've been doing a lot of work on myself. So I all of a sudden I felt a lot more like, I'm ready to do. I'm ready to do this, and I don't have anything to be afraid of. So let's just put that out there for people who are maybe a little on the fence about exploring this. When you decide to, it will find you, and you'll find a way to do it. You'll realize that there was a way to do it that was maybe right next door. That's how crazy it gets. So
that was cool. My experience too, is once I kind of said, okay, now I'm ready, even though I'd been researching it for a couple of years, when I finally tried to commit, actually, I tried to go book a ticket down to the jungle to do it. Unfortunately, financially, the rug got pulled out from underneath me in 2014. And I had reached out to the Sacred Valley in PSAC, and then it didn't happen. But I had already started that communication, I guess, telling the universe I'm ready to do this, and then the means and the ways to do it came up out of nowhere organically, right down the street in my neighborhood.
Yeah, like it's like
Anywhere, and
crazy how that happens, isn't it? I mean, it's like
beautiful thing. And it was like, a couple $100 as opposed to a couple thousand.
exactly. I almost had the exact same experience. I was ready to like, I'm like, well, I could get to Peru, and then I know someone there, and trying to make these arrangements. And I'm sitting with a friend, and we're just talking about Kundalini, and he was discussing a new practice, and was like, oh yeah, there's a temple that's not far from you. I'm like, no, I didn't know that. I had no idea. He was like, talk to me a little later. I'm like, I will talk to you. So that's crazy. But what was did you have any, were you able to decipher or communicate specifically with any ETs in some of these ceremonies? And what was the craziest thing that you felt you experienced?
Yeah, I was for a while there. I was getting so apt at getting the download, so to say, or communicating with different beings in those realms, that it was almost, I was almost using it, and I got the guidance. I was almost using it as a crutch to and a crutch in the sense that I was getting so much information and confirmations and communication using the plant medicines that it was becoming a I wouldn't say a habitual thing, but a quite often, something I was doing quite often. Which then my body was telling me, not only my body, but the beings themselves were saying, whoa, slow down. You don't need us to have this type of communication. And I listened to that, and I actually went, I didn't do any ceremony or medicine for a year, and just focused on breath work and meditation without the aid of the plant medicines. And once I could make that connection on my own without it, then I started reintegrating the plant medicines back in, but very sparsely. So, but going back, yes, I had communications with my hybrid kids. I had talked to mantis beings. I had gotten guidance on many things, and confirming and shown a lot of different things that I would get information from these interviews on the show that were sort of like breadcrumbs. And then I would go use the plant medicines to go behind the veil to really explore concepts like time, the constructs of the universe, consciousness, all of
How
these.
were they able to, like, if you could put it into words, not that they did, but if you could, how were they able to convey some of those messages to you? And how did it different from, like, like, I know I had an experience with the mantis collective. The mantis beings. And it was like so specific, but differently nuanced than some of my other experiences. Like, how are you able to kind of, like, how are they different? Like, if you don't mind.
I'm very much a what is it, clairsentient, I guess, would be more sensations and feelings. Clairvoyant, where a lot of visuals. So definitely on the plant medicines, I get a lot of visuals of different things, different concepts, whatever my intention or focus is. Then the visual downloads would come in, and then I wouldn't get much audible. It was more visual and then feeling. So then I would get sensations about some of the visuals that would come through, that would then guide me to interpret in a sense in my own language. And I would ask another question, okay, and then I would get shown this, and then I would ask another question and it's shown this, and then I would kind of project my visualization to, okay, something like this, and then I would get like a strong feeling, yes or no, oh no, not like that, more like this, okay, let's go. So it's an interesting, this
The navigation.
navigation and conversation you're having with your own psyche, and you have to find your own ways to navigate that.
Hmm.
And the plant medicines are a great tool to help you understand and discern this I call it another language, the sixth sense or whatever you want to call it, because you're writing your own language in a sense. Once you go into these realms, you have shamanic shamans and shamanic practices and meditation techniques and all this kundalini. You have all this stuff to help you navigate, but ultimately you're finding your own language because you're having a conversation with your higher self, your psyche, and stuff. So
Yeah.
you are your own guide. You have to figure it out.
Yeah.
But once you figure it out, the amount of information that you can disseminate and access and download and interpolate, it's infinite. So then it becomes just about figuring out the language and then figuring out the questions.
Yeah.
So if anybody's been on the plant medicines, or if you're intuitive, you understand what psychic phenomenon is.
Yeah.
And you can navigate that a little bit. You start to navigate that, and you start to recognize the archetypes, recognize the sensations, the feelings of what's coming in, what's coming out, and then you start to find and basically there's a lot to discern.
Yeah.
Because when you go behind the veil, you have access to all of it. You can go positive or you can go negative.
Yeah.
And you can, and it's really I think a tool when used properly to help guide you, just like with lucid dreaming or anything else, help guide you in this waking world as well, to find the right path for yourself that's going to lead to the most positive outcome.
Right. And the other thing I think it does is it allows you to discern on a more subconscious level how you are feeling and are interpreting what's happening in this physical reality.
Totally.
Because you've done it, like, it's like you kind of like checked out of this reality, took some master classes at chess to check back in and jump back into the game with your buddy, and he's like, well, hey, all of a sudden you're a few moves ahead of him, and you don't it's not necessarily a conscious thing, but I believe that's one of the takeaways that I've had from it, is it is a discernment and it is a navigation, but it's like it's also a surrender, and there's a playfulness involved that I think never needs to kind of cross into that fear, those survival programs that we have, because you're not in danger, you're never in danger. And it's one of the ways that I was really able to kind of just explore.
If you think you are, and that's, I think, in the negative sense, and that's where the tools are there is for us to kind of go through these ideas of danger and fear, and to understand that if we focus there, that we're just going to get more of that. And I think that's where a lot of people do a lot of that. We're given these safe zones to work out a lot of these emotional stuff. And that's where the plant medicines, lucid dreaming, meditations, visualization, we have a lot of techniques to help us navigate those realms in a behind the veil,
right?
So we don't self-destruct, because if there's certain concepts and ideas and things that we want to explore that because of our curiosity, that we can do safely in those realms.
Yeah.
If we do that in this realm, you get chewed up and spit out.
Yeah, yeah. There's not a lot of venues that allow for it. And the other thing I think that's amazing about it is, and just being a host on this podcast and talking to people, and we've only just begun doing this, but bringing knowledge from everything I did beforehand. Plant ceremonies give you an opportunity to integrate a lot of traumas that you may be sitting on or dealing with, and look, I think it's becoming more and more self-evident that trauma is carried in the body, and trauma, if left untreated, if left unexpressed, if left unhealed, can lead to sickness. It can lead to disease. And I know a lot of people who will tell you that there's a direct correlation between trauma and disease in the body, the disharmony that comes with that. So even if you to go on it, and really every ceremony is different. I think people who do it will tell you that as well. They're each very unique and very different from the last every single time. And so even if you had, don't be afraid, you may have a time that is less, than this amazing heavenly bliss, because that's still for your highest good. And there's still something going on there that is going to be positive for you.
Yeah, I've learned so much, probably more so from the tougher journeys than the blissful ones. And I think using that as a an example of our day-to-day lives. I think us as human beings, I think we're trying to unprogram that trait of having to learn the hard lesson the hard way. That's part of going through the hard lessons. So we could say we don't need the hard lesson to learn the hard way. But us as human beings, we still pick the tougher road so we can get the greater expansion. And I'm sure we've used the phrase in my show, and you've heard, you pull the rubber band back far enough and it's going to go that much further the other direction. So that's, in a sense, what we do in the ceremonies too, when we're going through these harder journeys, harder explorations of our psyche and our consciousness. We'll come out the other end that much stronger and that much more aware and understanding of
absolutely
that, the reason why we had to put ourselves through that tough time of throwing up buckets of
oh yeah, nothing like that chorus. Have you ever heard of Project Bluebeam, Reuben?
Yes, I have. Very much so.
Like, what are your thoughts on that? And I know that you're aware of, because I know that you're familiar with Dr. Gur's work, and he often talks about von Braun. Yeah, von Braun, and what was said, and I'm just wondering, do you feel like that this is a possible scenario in our reality with what's going on?
So integrating, I'm in a very interesting place because I am very aware of all of the so-called conspiracy theories, or the talk about things like Project Bluebeam, the evidence-based stuff that we have, that Greer and many of the evidence-based researchers go into. Very aware, Q, the Q phenomenon, the Illuminati, the international banking cartels, the vaccination agendas, Bill Gates. I follow it all. I'm very aware of all of that stuff, have been for years. It fascinates me. Simultaneously, I'm learning from the ETs about how, constructs of reality, how we create our own reality, what we choose to focus on is what we pull in.
Yeah.
So understanding that those teachings, and how do we navigate this one layer of reality where there's some very nasty, dangerous stuff going on in the world, human trafficking.
Oh, before we go on, Reuben, can you explain Project Bluebeam in your words?
Okay. So so I'm just sort of setting up the groundwork
Okay, sure.
for that. So having understanding all of these different sort of conspiracy theories and ideas, and in real world, I mean, the world the lens that I look through, I try to have it as wide as possible to see as many different perspectives and ideas on things, and incorporating the ET teachings that I've been exposing myself to through the channeling and everything else. So I have a very wide lens when looking at, I'm just giving you reference of how I view reality. And I try to look at it through the widest possible lens. I love Bashar's quote, all truths are true. That, to me, that resonates. And I believe all of these, any possibility or any idea, if you can imagine it exist, it is a possibility. It is there. If somebody else imagines it and you're not, it's still part of their reality.
Yeah.
So to deny their imagination, to deny that reality, would be a disservice to them, a disservice to you, because now you're judging or neglecting somebody else's perspective. So now, getting back to Project Bluebeam. Project Bluebeam, through the research, through Greer and many other researchers, have uncovered that there are documents supporting this, that the CIA, and amongst other, Illuminati groups or whatever these groups you want to call them, they have many labels, have a planned agenda to convince the world that ETs are evil and bad, and have technology to project craft or these things in a holographic way to give people the impression that we're being attacked by ETs, or that there's some sort of nefarious ET invasion, right? So we know through, if you watch my show and if you research this, we know that there will never be that scenario, because the ETs, if they could have done it, they would have done it a long time ago. They wouldn't wait for us to weaponize and get our technology
up to par,
with theirs, so they could actually have a battle in the sky. That's not their intention. If they wanted to rape and pillage us, they would have done it a long time ago.
Yeah.
Before we even, and still, our advanced technology is just nothing compared to the technology.
Of course, yeah. And then there are such things as laws. Just because you leave the planet doesn't mean that it's lawlessness.
Exactly.
The more advanced the civilization is, the less laws you need, because the right, there's a right and wrong that is inherent in that everything.
As you sort of mentioned earlier or brought up, free will, that is a universal law that all sentient beings have. And yes, it can be manipulated, and we're seeing that happen with our media and everything right now. But at the end of the day, if we're focused and centered, we still have that free will choice to buy into something or not, to, even with the manipulation of it. So the ETs, they, from my interviews and my venturing into the other realms, have made it very apparent that free will choice is clearly there, that we all have that, and we should exercise that right as much as we can. So anyways, this idea that Project Bluebeam could be a thing, where the CIA or these powers, it could be a weapon, so to say, to use against the psyche of the people, to help pursue certain agendas. Yes, it's on the table. It's hard to say if that card's going to be played at this time, or if it ever will be played, or if that's an old card that's now, they've already exhausted that.
They got a brand new card we don't know about yet. New
cards that we don't know about yet. So it is a possibility. I'm not going to rule it out, but I'm going to lean towards it not being one of the cards they play. And if they do play that card, I think this conversation and the show, and there's a lot of information out
Yeah.
there that enough people would be on the side of, yeah, that's probably bullshit.
Yeah.
Let's
Calling it
let's not
bullshit.
focus on, yeah. So we have um, a
And
lot of,
look, that those people calling, bullshit is not, I mean, it accumulates. I think that you're seeing that with the response to this COVID vaccine.
yeah, totally.
In the beginning, there was just a few of us
Mhm.
saying, you know,
Something's up here.
I don't know, I'm going to go into it,
Yeah,
and now I think it's up to like 60%. So, people say, oh, conspiracy theory this, conspiracy theory that, but we know programming is very possible in our society. We know that human beings, are prone to thinking along lines that they're taught to think and taught to believe. So enough people start saying it, and then, all of a sudden it catches on. It's now you have about 60% of the population. To the fact that one of the questions in that last debate was, how would you try and convince the American public that a vaccine is safe? I'm like, well, why not ask, why not how would you make sure that the vaccine is safe, not how would you convince them that it's safe? I'm like, oh,
yeah.
society is just so crazy.
The question itself was giving away a lot of
It
the
wasn't it? I mean, I thought it was.
yeah, the intention behind it. We're in that era right now, and this is part, this is what get into the show a bit. Most of the show is in some way or another referencing this great time of transformation. Some people, some of the channelers call it ascension, or calling it, we have the term the Great Awakening. We're in this time right now where we're being forced to look at our reality through a new lens.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that, like Wendy Kennedy said, like the abduction scenario, is a soul contract. So we're actually, back in the 80s, when you had select individuals having these red pill moments where they're getting taken out of their bed and having these interactions with ETs, in a sense, globally now, we are red pilling ourselves, not necessarily from an ET abduction scenario, but from our own our own push and pull of
Yeah.
this crazy time that we're in. And again, I think it's all done by design. So for us individually and collectively to wake up to a greater reality,
Yeah.
which is we create it. We get to create our reality, and what we choose to focus on, and what we choose to well, basically just what we choose to focus on is what we're going to experience.
Yeah.
And we're learning how that works, and we're having to, again, I think, so going back to Project Bluebeam, if we focus on that scenario, and if we focus on that idea, and then we could very much easily manifest a Project Bluebeam reality. But do we need to? So that's
Right. Do
that's
we need a second wave? Do we need
right.
There's 200,000 more deaths before the end of the year. I'm like,
right.
November, almost. It's like,
so again, to sort of go to where focus on what's needed now. So where I'm at with my life is I know all the conspiracies. I know all the possibilities, and this, it could go this way, it could go that way, and the doom and gloom. And right now I'm just like, you know what? I know all this stuff. I'm red pilled enough that I know that I create my own reality, that I need to start focusing on that reality. Like, I don't need any more signals or any more evidence to say this is the reality is not what you think it is. I've been for over a decade. I've gone into, I've seen, chemtrails, the Illuminati, the international banking cartels, the military industrial complex, the white hats, the Q, the vaccine, Gates, fluoride in the water, the towers coming down, the suppression of information from free energy technologies, the pyramids being created by some other alternate technologies. Like all of this stuff is all there as evidence to say, hey, wake up, go create your own reality. If you think, and if you still need more, if you still need more evidence, if you still need more stuff to say that you're not quite sure if you create your reality yet or not, we're going to keep giving you more and more. If you just, pyramids in Antarctica, ETs, obviously we've covered that. So just what else do you need to say, hey, enough is enough?
Yeah, life maybe isn't what you thought it was.
Right. So let's start making it what we want it. And that's really where I'm at right now with my evolution. Is it's time to start creating those realities, and now we're being given the tools now. These free energy technologies that were suppressed are no longer being suppressed. We are gaining access. We have access to the technologies. We can no longer, the story is shifted now from these technologies and these ideas, sustainable ways of living, where the government's going to shut it down and all this stuff. If you look at what's going on in the government right now, they're a little
busy.
They're a little busy, and there's a lot going on for the old government to survive in this new paradigm, and it can't. So guess what, guys? There's a smokescreen up for anybody who wants to pursue a new way of life. You're not going to get attacked. You're not going to get shunned. You're not, the world, there's
giant permission slip.
It's a giant permission slip to go out there and go create the reality you want. And there's no excuses now. There's no more excuses. We blamed the Illuminati in the past. We blamed the military industrial complex. We were government. Oh, I can't do this. I can't do that because of all of this. Well, guess what? That's all gone now. I mean, it's still there. Obviously we're seeing it, and it's in our face, and they want us to really focus on that. But what I'm saying is, don't focus on Project Bluebeam. Don't focus on, the vaccine thing. Don't focus on all that stuff, because that is dying. It's a dying world that wants you. Hey, look at this. Look at this. Look at this. So your attention does get pulled over there. So then they can keep you in that manipulation game of, hey, look over here. Do this.
You're giving it energy by giving it your attention.
That's just the faster you can unplug from that reality. I watch it just to know where it's going. But there's a way to, when you can get to a place where you can watch it without the emotional investment and just kind of laugh at it like, oh yeah, I'm
like 50-50 right now. I mean, I laugh at it most of the time, but sometimes I'm in a mood and I read it, I'm like cursing under my breath. I know, I'm just like fucking idiots, like, and I'm like, don't fall into that. But most of the time, even the most, and it's, I don't think it's insensitive. It's just, it's absurd to me. Like the headlines, I read them and they're atrocious. And I'm just like, are you kidding me? That's the headline. Like, and people read this and they're like, oh my God, this is true. and I'm just like, I can't help but laugh.
No, you have it. That's good. Laughing is a good place to be. And that's where I'm at too. I just have to laugh at it right now and just like, oh, yeah. And actually I'm thankful for what's happening. I know a lot of people are like, oh my God, the world's falling apart. This is actually some of the best, all of the stuff that's happening right now is just reinforcement and confirmation from everything that I've been doing for the past 10 years, for the stories I've been uncovering, for the information that's been coming through the channel material. It's all happening as predicted that it would, in a sense that the falling apart of our reality and the seams and how we perceive it. It's great. I'm so excited about the times we're in right now.
Yeah.
Because I know from being in this as deep as I have been for the past 10 years, that what's on the other side.
Yeah.
And not even what's on the other side, what's happening in my life and the communities and the people that I'm talking to and interacting right now, what's happening is incredible. And yes, this old paradigm is falling apart, and it's sad to see to a certain extent, because there are people so caught up in that old
Yeah.
paradigm that they are in a,
That's the bigger thing, is how many people are still clinging
they're
and
clinging.
caught up in this tragedy that they feel they're a part of, you know?
But that's not our job. Our job is to not wake them up.
Yeah.
Our job is to go build the new paradigm as fast as we can. So then by doing that, we give them, when they're ready on their own time, they're able to see, oh, there's an alternative
Yeah.
over
There's a
here
different way.
that I don't have to be stressed. Look at everybody over there is healthy. They're eating healthy food. They seem to be getting along really well. There's no, fights in the streets. There's no riots. There's none of that garbage. There's no name calling. They seem to be living harmoniously in these communities with an abundance of food and energy. Maybe I should switch
Check
over
it
to
out. Yeah.
and they're not only that, they're also super welcoming and open arms. And
Yeah.
they're not discriminating and looking down at anybody over here.
Very low cancer rates there
Very low
too.
cancer rates. Stress is great.
Right.
There is zero stress.
I mean, eventually
That's where
it's going to catch on. Yeah.
my focus is creating these new paradigms of reality, of community, and I'm working. I won't go into too much detail right now, but that's where in addition to continuing the show and continuing to put these messages out, to have the conversation with the ETs, but my main focus and my goal is I want to start interacting physically with the ETs as soon as possible.
Yeah.
And in order to do that, we need to create we need to raise our vibration. They have to lower theirs to a certain extent to get here to interact with us.
Yeah.
Or we can meet them at their level, or strive to do that, the easier that bridge becomes.
Yeah.
So that the day will come where we can hang out, have a coffee,
Learn.
change ideas, share cultures.
Sure.
And the more we do that on this level, we open the door to do that on that level.
Absolutely.
So the more people around us in our communities that we're open to, and try to understand their views of life and their way of whatever their religious beliefs or their worldview is, to try to understand that and then offer perspectives, non-judgment, and acceptance of whatever their belief is. But then sort of how do I integrate my belief with that belief? How do we
it's non-judgmental. That's it's stepping back from the duality, because we live in a polarized planet. Literally, it's polarized, right? There's a north and south pole.
We're probably more polarized now than we've been in a long time.
Absolutely. And so as above, so below. And this is what I've noticed is, people don't realize that, part of our tendency to make something, or want to make something black or white, or this or that, or you're either wrong or you're right, and this is a fact or it's not, or this is true or it's false, is the fact that this is the planet that we're living on. But we're here to transcend that, and we can transcend that. And as we do, as more of us do, you're going to find less and less of an inclination to make something this or that. And that's my understanding of how highly evolved beings live in a society together. There's not, you don't bother with names like good and evil, because that's you're talking about anyway. I mean, that you may be confused and may have made a mistake, but that is you nonetheless. And that's how people are like, oh, that this person's evil. Now I'm like, they're not. Nobody's really evil. That's just a word that we use. No one's really bad. They just may be doing things that you don't like. But everybody is sentient.
I try to empathize with for example, Bill Gates. Let's try to get into his head. And there's a great documentary series that the Covert Report had put out a few months ago, and it's like a 5-part series on Gates, and really tries to get into the mind of Gates. So when you try to see that. You try to understand, okay, how was he raised? You know, what belief systems has been exposed to? You know, what stories has he been fed? As well with a lot of these people
Yeah.
in
The
you know,
global, the elite. Yeah.
yeah, you just kind of get in their head and you kind of see the world from their lens, and you're like, okay, I can see if I was raised this way and I had
Yeah.
these limited belief structures, then I would try to use whatever power I can to create a reality that's going to be in this
Safe,
safe for
and
this type of belief system, right?
that's
So,
right.
and protective. That's all that's going on.
Exactly.
So yes, it is eugenics and depopulation of the planet,
Yeah. Yeah.
but but
But
you can see it from
doesn't
that.
mean that he doesn't mean well,
It doesn't
what
mean,
I'm saying is
I
I
don't
don't.
agree with that reality, and
Yeah.
I definitely don't want that. But if you can empathize in a sense
Yeah.
from that perspective, then you can say, okay, this is you can see the mechanisms of how that happened. If you're
Yeah.
just gonna say, oh, this guy's evil and he's gonna try to suck your
Yeah.
blood and take your babies away, then that's that it kind of you don't. Well, where do you go from there? There's no
Right.
place. How do you?
And that's a scary place to reside in,
Totally scary. There's
you know?
nothing good that's going to come out of just like evil guy. He's going to suck your
Yeah,
blood.
so you're demonized him into this powerful thing that he is not really. He's
Exactly.
just another human being.
It's another human being that has a lot of resources.
A lot
So
of resources. Yeah.
and in a sense, by not understanding the mechanism of even how he got those resources, and even the mechanism of where his plan to keep and hold on to those resources and how that works, when you stop demonizing these people and you start in a sense empathizing with them,
Certainly.
to try to understand how they got their power, where they're headed with the power, then you can kind of see a couple steps ahead into the future, and you can kind of say, oh, okay, that's how that happened. Well, what can I do in my power, with the power that I have in my reality, to not feed that anymore, to
Yeah.
feed any of those mechanisms? And it's not, and part of that is, yes, not buying into the vaccine agenda, but also understanding the bigger picture of, oh, okay, these people live in this fear reality, so therefore they think they have to take these steps to keep their wealth, not understanding that there's unlimited wealth and unlimited resources for all of us
Yeah.
to thrive and to cohesively live in a utopian society, in a sense, what I
Hmm.
perceive as utopia, which may be hell for some other people, but in a sense, when you see all those mechanisms and you stop the polarity game, you can then put your focus on your life, and that's
Yeah.
all that really matters. In putting your resources and your energy into a place that doesn't support those
Yeah.
destructive.
To let them shrivel. Yeah.
Yeah, and eventually they're just gonna fall to the wayside.
Yeah. Um, so my favorite question to ask my guests, Ruben, I don't know if you've got a chance to watch any of the podcasts yet,
I
but
have, and I it's like I know the question, but I don't. But I don't.
that's okay.
I think I was like rehearsing one time. I was like, "Oh, what if Faust asked me that?" But
Yes, that's awesome.
but ask it, and then I can be
Okay,
refreshed.
if you were leaving, if you were transitioning, whether that be onto the next life or if you were leaving with some friends to go and explore a different planet, different solar system, but you could leave the human race one lesson, one mantra, one teaching that you feel would help us, live in a more harmonious society. If everyone could understand and believe what you were teaching, what would you tell them?
That they are sovereign, powerful beings, that they have the ability to create their own reality, and that the only reason it may not appear that way is because we haven't fully exercised our individual sovereignty uh, that's it. Yeah. I think that we all need to understand that we are creating this adventure as we're going along here, and it is a individual experience, but it is also a collective experience.
Mm.
And the individual harmonization of with the collective is what is the experience we get. So the more we can stay focused on the self as opposed to the outside reality, is the closer we'll get to the reality that we choose to create. And we've heard this from all of the great teachers: go within before you go without. And I think that's truly,
if you don't go within, you go without.
If you don't go within, you go without. So really going within, understanding that we have immense amounts of power, way more than we're told in the external world, and to cultivate that power. And not in a oppressive way where we're going to force our beliefs on anybody else, but to cultivate that inner power, knowing that with more inner power, we can help others find their inner power.
Yeah.
And
you think of Wim Hof when you say that. There's a person who has used his exploration of his inner power to help a lot of people, and everyone is capable of what he's capable of. But
absolutely resonate with the Wim Hof message.
I know you do, and you teach some of his techniques really well too. You're the first person who ever taught me some of his breathing techniques.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So Reuben, this has been awesome, man. So much material, and it's awesome to have you on, dude. Probably going to have you on again one day, because there's just so much to talk about, and enjoyed it.
Likewise. Thank you
very much. So you take care, brother. I'm sure I'll talk to you very soon, and we'll be in touch. We'll let you know if this come out in about a week or two.
Sweet. Can't wait.
All right, brother. Thank you so much for your time, man. Appreciate it.
All right.
Take care, bro.
Bye.